Disclaimer. This bonus episode discusses issues relating to children's mental health. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to a Chatting with Casey Children's Mental Health Week special. Episode 2. Let's not take mental health for granted. Welcome to Chatting with Casey, the podcast that's all about family, food, fashion, and faith, and travel, and tech, and finding out that the fake it till you make it philosophy applies even to parenting. So for the second conversation in this Children's Mental Health Week special, we're taking a look at the issue at hand from a very different angle. One thing I enjoy about my podcast is that they give people the opportunity to call me out on my bull. Past episodes open my eyes on things like why the number of gay people in the world is probably seriously underreported, and why I have no right to tell single mothers they can't celebrate Father's Day. And when I put the general awareness and stigma against mental health into question, Irwin Ellman, who until recently served as the Ontario Child Advocate, was quick to call me on it. But things only went up from there as we dissected the disconnect between immigrant communities and mental health awareness, my desires as a parent to foster a healthy environment for my children's mental health, and some of the things we can do collectively to make sure our children feel heard, seen, and understood. It's the Chatting with Casey Mental Health Week 2019 special episode 2. Let's not take mental health for granted. Let's check it out. Hello, everyone. It's Casey Palmer here for another chat for Children's Mental Health Week. And on the phone, we have Irwin Ellman, the former Ontario Child Advocate, with us to talk about Children's Mental Health Week and what it means to him. Irwin, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for calling.
Oh, thanks for chatting. I fully appreciate it.
No worries.
So I feel like we're in an environment where we have a plethora of children's mental health issues, but not nearly enough, perhaps, awareness or involvement from the public at large when it comes down to it. So I'm curious as to what Children's Mental Health Week means for you.
Well, for me, I don't know. I'm interested in your initial comment because I think with Now Let's Talk and people feeling, adults anyway, feeling more comfortable to out themselves, I guess, and talk about their mental health challenges. There's been a lot of talk about it. I don't think it's changed the stigma that children and youth feel. So I think that's important why we have this week. It's still there, despite this idea that, okay, people know and so many people have had mental health touch them, whether it's them, their children, their relatives, their friends. It's not a secret any longer. That's true. But still a stigma. But for me now, the week has moved to, so what are we going to do about it? And I always used to think about that when I talk to young people or service providers, which we wanted to talk about what was wrong, which was really important to do. But if we left it there, that seemed to me that there was work undone, and we had to move to, so what would good look like and what are we going to do about it? And I think that's what this week means to me now is, okay, we know this to be true. It's not a secret anymore. It's really important to continue to talk about it so people feel comfortable to, but we're at the what would good look like. And then how are we going to make this happen? And it's really hard, I think, in this environment in Ontario to figure out both what would good look like and what are we going to do together about it, because that's not sort of and in a nonpartisan way even. It's not the agenda of the government right now. to figure out what would good look like before they make a decision, and how to implement things is not where they're at. It's more about money, and I'm thinking, I'm not even talking about money. I'm thinking we don't know how to solve this and to get the supports to children and families when they need it. And even if we had a picture of what that would look like, we don't know how to make that happen yet. And that's a conversation that needs to happen.
That's a fair counterpoint to start with there. I think from my standpoint, I've dealt with not a large amount of mental health issues in my life, but there have been the nervous breakdown from too much pressure in high school and trying to. My children right now are 3 and 5, so I'm trying to raise them in a very emotionally sound and mental health first type of environment where I want them to be in touch with their feelings, understand that they can express themselves, things of that nature. I'm trying not to repress anything to make sure that they can be as true to themselves as they can be. And I know that hasn't been necessarily afforded to many children from at least, growing up in past decades.
Right.
But
for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's the lens I was coming from when I think about it, because I see other parents of children of similar ages, and at least where I'm coming from and what I see around me, I just don't see that worry yet, because I feel like they just haven't gotten to some of the bigger issues that children will face down the road. But I'm sure that as the years go on, things will change, and I will see things from a different way.
I'm a parent too, of 11-year-old and 15, and I can see how I wish when they were younger I had thought of like you, because I can see how you build. We think about nutrition. I guess you're making me think this way. We think about nutrition when they're younger and how to make sure they eat their vegetables and eat their fruit and don't eat junk food, and get them in a pattern that way so that they grow up healthy.
Yep.
But parents, even myself, didn't think about, okay, well, how do we make sure that we build from an early age on mental health so that they grow up healthy in that sense. And even if I wanted to, how do I do that? Nobody's ever taught me, and I'm an old guy. Don't sound like old like me, but nobody's ever taught us how to parent that way. So, thank you for saying what you did. Made me think about that as being as important as a program, right? Because that certainly is preventative, and something, if we thought about it more and parents thought about it more and we taught parents more, it might create change in itself without a program, right?
That's the hope.
Yeah, really interesting.
It's true. I mean, I'm currently 35, and I'm from a Jamaican background, so born in Mississauga. But as you probably well know, in the Black community, we don't really pride mental health all that much. It's not a thing that we were raised to put strength on. It's like, make sure you do well in school, make sure you have good efforts and everything. So it's something that wasn't necessarily around me much growing up, but from my own experiences, I recognize that the mind is not a thing that we should take lightly or take for granted. We need to make sure that it's nurtured and that we continue feeding it with the right things so that it can be there with you in a sound capacity as you go through the years and everything. And obviously there's things you can't control, or things that will happen from whether it's a chemical or situational standpoint. But as a parent, I feel like it's my job to make sure that I'm at least giving them that nurturing, open environment, so that if anything's going wrong outside there in the greater world, they can at least come back to something where there's that balance, or where if I don't know how to help them with a problem, I'm more than happy to go and help find their supports to make that happen. I appreciate what you're saying too about importance of cultural background and cultural approaches that are specific in terms of service and approaches, because young people have told me and over again that in certain communities it's different to just speak about
mental health challenges, that the stigma is different. And, I remember, I know it's on a podcast, but I remember young people saying to me, you white people, you can talk about your personal business at a drop of a hat. That's not how we're taught, right?
It's true.
We just don't do that. So it's not just so easy to just come out and talk that way. And we need specific approaches and our own communities to have services embedded within them that serve us. And I appreciate that. I think it's probably true. And so that's another place that I think we can think about this week in Children's Mental Health Week, and how we serve and talk about the issue in various communities.
Definitely. And it's been raised in a few of the other conversations I've had that we can't treat it like there's one blanket solution to help with mental health, in that if you break a leg, you break a leg. If you get a cut, you get a Band-Aid, whatever, Polysporin, you make it work. But when it comes down to the mind, it's such a complex thing that you really need to build relationships with the individuals who have the mental health issues in order to make sure you're listening to them and giving them the supports that they individually need. It's a very different beast altogether.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's hard for bureaucrats and governments to think about things that way, because we really need as another thing a young person told me, we really need a human solution to a human problem, not an institutional solution to a human problem. And there needs to be a sense of humanity in thinking about all of this. And that leads to, this idea of individual solutions for individual people, because we're all different, have different backgrounds and need different approaches. So completely true. And it's really hard to build a system that's flexible enough to do that.
Indeed. So Erwin, I also am an individual who does research. So I did, make sure to do some Googling before I had this conversation. I was like, okay, what's Erwin Elman guy all about, what's happening? And I've seen your name pop up in the news quite a bit lately, as I know you are finding less than favorable conditions at certain, institutions out there in our province. I suppose the question that stems from that is, it's kind of goes back to the original question that you were saying. We know there's a problem, and we know that things are not ideal. What do you think us lay people can do in order to help build a better future out there for our children, and making sure that they have the services they need in order to address the issues that we now know are out there? They're out there in the open, but what can we do to help build that better tomorrow?
Well, it's so trite for me to say this, but I believe it's the truth. When I first started, I worked with kids for, I don't know, I say kids still, they're probably going to be mad at me for saying that, but saying that, I have worked with them for 35, 40 years. Okay. And I remember when I first started, I had this technique that I thought was really good. I'd say, I make sure I would tell them I believe in them. And I would, if they said they wanted to be a doctor, I would say whether I believed it or not, you can. And I'm with you, and I believe in you. And the interesting thing that happened was that I thought it was this technique. And then, I noticed that whether they were in care or had faced mental health challenges or from the youth justice system or disabled, they started accomplishing what they said they wanted to do.
Wow.
And they taught me that it's not that wasn't a trick. I believe in them. I should believe in them because they can. And so I want to say that is something that I think we all can do. Is no matter who is in front of us, what child we have, what disabilities we think they are struggling with, what mental health challenges, we should be able to believe that they can overcome them. And that's really important. And it actually is the truth. They can. But they need people, and I believe this, to believe in them. And I think we all as individuals can do that. And the only way you can demonstrate belief in a person, it's not just telling them that, is by listening. And I think for children and for all of us, especially now, it's going to be really crucial for us to step up and listen to children and not only believe them, but believe in them and demonstrate that and say it's going to be okay and say, I'm going to be with you. All of us, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a bus driver, a school, an employer, a counselor, a service provider in other ways, we have to do that, because frankly, I feel like what's happening now is young people are starting to feel like our province doesn't believe in them, and we are the province. So in some ways, if we do that and our systems begin to do that, and it doesn't cost money to do that, we can get through a probably difficult period of time for this province and be ready for, if it's winter now, be ready for spring, which inevitably is going to come, because it always does. We've been here, and I think listening and believing in young people is something we can do, and allow them, when we're listening, to lead us. We can do that. It doesn't take more funding. It doesn't matter if the government decides to make class sizes bigger so they can build more resilience, or whatever ridiculous spin they have on it. Whatever they're going to do, believe in children and talk to them. It's time to step up, Ontario. And I think that's something really important to do in Children's Mental Health Week, because otherwise, I mean, anything that's happening is just going to pile up on children who are already struggling with mental health challenges. Okay. That's what I think.
That's a good point. I mean, we need to, it sounds perhaps cliche when I say it, but we need to be the change. We need to make sure that we are actively doing what's necessary in order to build what we envision for the children who are important to us in our lives.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, just to add as the last thing, is to do it intentionally. I think, and it's exactly what you're doing when you talk to me about being a parent, intentionally trying to create a better environment for your children's mental health, your personal children's mental health. And I think if we're intentionally trying to listen to young people and children in everything we do, if we're intentionally and trying to demonstrate our belief in them, that's really important. And it's not up to just, the person who's naturally good at that. No, it's all of us intentionally need to remember to do that. That will be a change in itself.
Very true. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for calling me.
I really appreciate it. This was a very eye-opening conversation, and I think
nice to talk to you.
I feel like a lot of people could learn from this and really take some takeaways on how to be that positive impact in their communities, whether they have children or not, but from the young people that they interact with and interface with in their lives, how to take those small steps in order to build the better tomorrow we're looking for.
Definitely step up, Ontario.
All right. So everyone, that was me and Erwin Ellman, and make sure to continue checking out here with the links I'll attach in the show notes for more Children's Mental Health Week content. Thanks so much. Believe in our children. It's such a simple idea, but could very well change some young lives for the better in a world that's constantly trying to put them in a box. It's easy enough to look at their problems with decades more life experience under our belts and just write them off as phase. But children's problems are just as real to them as yours are to you. We need to treat them accordingly. But a big thank you to Erwin Ellman for taking the time to chat with me, and to you out there in podcast land for taking the time to listen. For even more Children's Mental Health Week related content, make sure to check out Children's Mental Health Ontario at cmho.org, or the other podcasts in this series at caseypalmer.com/Children's Mental Health Week, with dashes in between the words. Don't worry, the link's in the show notes. You can just click there. But have yourself a great one, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow as we continue exploring the impact of children's mental health on families and what we can learn from it. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.